What a transformation. And now we have the topic of floodplain management, policy, and practice, for which I would like to invite on stage Srimati Nilima Soni, Director, Landscape DDA. Please welcome Srimati Nilima.
Good afternoon, everyone. Here we are going to be talking about the floodplain management. Policy se practice tak. So for DDA, the policy for revitalizing the floodplains came from the directions of the Honorable National Green Tribunal. We were given an aim to restore, rejuvenate the floodplains of River Yamuna. It was a new thing for us, so what did we do? We did study a lot of examples that were available for us and devised a methodology. That methodology was a 7-stage process. We first identified the goal. We've identified who are the agencies we had to deal with. To be able to protect, conserve, and rejuvenate, DDA is not the only body in Delhi who's dealing with this. Then we identified certain guiding principles. The first one was ecosystem restoration, minimizing the adverse impact of anthropogenic activities which all of us are doing or are part of it in some manner or the other. And then finally to connect the river to its people. It was not an easy task for us because this is something absolutely new for DDA, and this is what I'm talking about is about 2015 is where we started. Various strategies were formulated. I'll come back to that in next few slides. And then there were studies done. We divided it into 3 separate sections because this is all that we had to deal with in terms of what had to be done on site. So natural resource, man-made resource, and cultural resource. After having studied these factors in detail, we created certain parameters on the basis of which we carried out the analysis. So these overlays were created, which brought certain opportunities. So what we did was for natural resource assessment, sensitivity mapping and overlay analysis was done for man-made resources and for cultural resources as well. So these 3 assessments helped us develop the natural potential of the floodplains, relating it closely to the river, regulating the anthropogenic activities and the cultural activities that also had to be regulated. All these studies and these analyses, they brought us to a composite plan. So for one, someone may think composite plan means a plan of development. No, it was not only that. It was a plan which had policies. There was a methodology for project identification. There had to be an implementation mechanism and then a monitoring mechanism, because you can create, restore, recreate, rejuvenate, but who protects it? Who ensures that it is monitored as well? So we had to come up with a monitoring mechanism at the same time. So I'll just take you through. These are the 3 principles that I told you. The ecosystem restoration, which had to ensure flood control, biodiversity conservation, groundwater management, and then was the various impacts of the anthropogenic activities. As we all know, floodplains का utilization हम लोग सब किसी ना किसी प्रकार से कभी ना कभी करते हैं. So we are leaving our footprints in that area which is absolutely ecologically fragile. And then we finally wanted to connect people to its river. So this is an example. This is a matrix. We had a huge team of environmental planners, landscape architects, and urban designers with us at that point in time, working in the landscape department. And we came up with these principles and strategies. So some of these strategies were at the city level, and some of them were at the floodplain level. So we actually figured out which strategy will achieve the required goal for which principle. So this mapping was done. The list is long. We got some few here. And after this mapping was done, we did background studies. We started studying the city as a whole. Delhi, since DDA is, you can say, the designer of Delhi in all respects. So we started studying from the master plan. Then we came down to the level of floodplains in each respect, like land use mapping, green areas mapping, where were the commercial districts, what were the overexploited areas, what was the density analysis, visual resource studies, movement networks, everything. Someone may question, why are you studying city of Delhi? In order to restore the floodplains, it's all connected. If I'm standing here at Masera, at this 1A location of Masera, it is not in isolation that we see it. It's just the same. We took data from Central Groundwater Board and various other agencies, and all this data was available with us. We figured out what was the area where the exact groundwater profile was. And then it led to certain interesting realizations, which usually, unless we do not go in depth, we will not understand. There was a long-term water fluctuation in certain districts of Delhi. There was over-exploited districts that we saw. There were areas where there was more fluoride or nitrate. And there were TDS that was high in various sections. Coming to the floodplain level, there were certain interesting things again we got to know. Then there is this fresh saline water interface, and the levels completely vary from in the entire stretch of the floodplain. Groundwater depth post monsoon is different in different sections. And to tell you a fact that usually we think that if that is the channel of the river and those are the floodplains, the groundwater movement must be towards the floodplains. No, dear friends, in certain sections in the city, the groundwater movement is in the opposite direction. So if you try and recharge, the water will not go to the river. It'll move in the opposite directions. And this is not a data DDA created. This data was taken from Central Groundwater Board. We went further and we realized, then we knew there were main 22 drains. Now we know that there are more than 130 drains, which are sub-drains of these drains. So we realized what are those drains, what are their discharge points, what are the volumes they are discharging. Why? To be able to understand हम कितना गंदा पानी अपनी river में डाल रहे हैं. Then we mapped the entire area. We realized what are the high areas and the low areas. This 1 in 25-year floodplain concept came out of the direction of Honorable National Green Tribunal, and GSDL, the Geospatial Data Limited in Delhi, was given the task to identify a contour in which the water would flood in this particular frequency. This map was created. Further, then we realized that we're doing a lot of studies, but there were various gaps in our studies. So we identified whatever the gaps in our studies, and then we tried to fill it. Beyond that, went into the in detail, in-depth analysis of the entire site. So we walked 52 kilometers, both the banks, and all these things we were able to do because Honorable Green Tribunal had formulated a principal committee for us, in which there were 3-4 experts. Professor C.R. Babu was the ecologist lead in it, Professor A.K. Gosai, late Professor Brij Gopal, and Professor Kazmi from IIT Roorkee. So they walked with us and they helped understand what were the principles and how to apply them. And we did a detailed water and vegetation analysis as to which area should be planted with what was the classification of these anthropogenic activities that we were carrying out on our floodplains. Then we started working on the opportunity maps. So to be able to revive the ecosystem, जो नदी का पहले जहाँ नदी बहती थी, जो उसका लैंड था, जहाँ जिस किस्म के पौधे उगते थे, जिस किस्म पे पक्षी और जानवर, माइक्रो ऑर्गेनिजम्स होते थे, how should we be able to revive that? So we identified what were the areas where the groundwater depth or the depth of the profile of the soil was different, higher or lower. So we tried to understand where we could create these catchment wetlands or detention basins. Along with that, we had to create certain riparian zones, a plantation that grows happily in those areas. And then we realized that with the infiltration basins or the wetlands along the floodplains, there were certain areas that could be made easily accessible to public as well. So this here shows something similar where you could actually draw out a complete ecological corridor for 52 kilometers if you are able to put all the wetlands and the zones and the ecosystems together. So we did study, based on the topography, we did study what sort of a plantation should come where, and these were learned from Professor C.R. Babu because he has always been our guide. He told us which plant to be taken where, and that was studied and brought in our analysis as well. We realized that because of all the rail road bridges, we had fragmented our floodplains. So very much so, we needed to do that because we need accessible corridors of transport movement as well. So we realized there were certain areas where we could create the connect or the bridge under the bridges. So these were the areas where the treatment wetlands had to be created. Wherever there were larger drains that were discharging into the floodplains, we needed to create. So we identified 2-3 sites, and this was an initiative we thought that we should be able to do. So mind you, these are what I'm trying to show you here is all the policy level decisions that we came up with after having studied at various scales. And then we realized there were certain dilapidated areas which could be used for public as well. That land could be made accessible to public for the river people connect. So there were certain ideas that we could have an environmental learning park, we could create those degraded zones where people could come with their children, spend time, learn about what the river was. And finally, this is what came up. After all those strategies and analysis and study, DDA came up with a composite map. And then what happened? And then the practice started. So when we actually went on the site, what is it that we needed to do? So why the aim here is reiterated back in this slide is to be able to achieve this aim, we had to divide our objectives into three parts. We had to protect our floodplains. That meant there were people illegally sitting on the floodplain. So they had to be repossessed, and we had to physically demarcate and mark it and take that land back with us. Then ecological restoration had to be planned. There were places where you could create grasslands. There were places where you could create forests. There were places there were existing depressions, and where you could plant riverine buffers. And of course, the constructed wetland systems to clean the dirty water. And finally, the River People Connect, which actually brings the ownership back and would probably revive the floodplains better. To be able to carry out those objectives, what did we need to do? So we tried to understand, we read, we researched the three kind of ecosystems that we needed to create: grasslands, forest, and wetland ecosystem. So what you see on the top was the existing situation then, like almost now 10 years ago. And we fixed targets for us. What you see at the bottom were certain parts of our biodiversity parks, which was already under revival by the CEMD with us. And then we started studying, how do you choose your trees? You cannot plant any tree anywhere. So how do you choose your trees? So there were certain parameters that we understood that required. High salinity and EC was one. Nesting of birds was another. Feeding habits, trying to understand the feeding habit of birds and then plant those trees so that they bring back the ecosystem. There was certain understory, middle story, which needed to be planted with each other to be able to achieve that complete ecosystem. Very interesting. We see these grasses growing, and you probably, few of you are already aware of the floodplain projects, and few of you might take trips after this expo is what we hope. You will be able to see certain grasses growing along wetland areas, riparian areas. They're just not growing on their own, and they're not growing by choice. They have been planted in these categories, because if you plant, say for example, Typha, Phragmites, and Saccharum, they lead to a generation of a particular kind of an ecosystem. So we learned all this, and then there was this wetland flora. What we understood was, to be able to plant trees, there had to be a vertical stratification, which needed to be kept in place. And for wetland ecosystem, there had to be a horizontal stratification that need to be in place. All this learning we've had by virtue of our interactions with a lot of seniors who've guided us. In fact, we sent our teams to Yamuna Biodiversity Park and to be taught under Professor Sia Babu and Dr. Fayaz, who was one of the speakers yesterday, and he's present here. So teams, whatever they learned, they brought back to us, and then they started. So Asita is one of the projects. They started applying there. We had discussions, and then we realized probably we could go ahead with that. So what is it that we face on the site? These were the various limitations or challenges we face. It's not a clean slate that was given to us. Okay, this piece of land is available, please go ahead and develop it or restore it. No, there were litigation, there were ongoing court cases, there were people sitting, there were infrastructure projects cutting across floodplains, there were interdepartmental coordinations, and various other challenges that we faced on the site. Finally, this is where we stand today. So from Wazirabad to Okhla Barrage, it's about 22 kilometers of stretch of the floodplains. DDA has about 1,700 hectares of land divided into 12 and 13 projects. And to tell you proudly that we are already working on 6, 7 of them, and 3, 4, 5 of them are already restored, and you're sitting on one of them. What is it that we achieved? So we achieved the protection. In past 3 years, we have been able to recover 1,557 acres of land back to us. You see the figures about more than 88,000 metric ton C&D waste and more than 5,000 garbage lifted. To be able to protect it further, we have our security, we have our CCTV, and as per the court's mandate, we are cutting challans of vehicles who are trying to dump waste. And ecological restoration parameters, what we speak as of today, we have been able to plant about 0.7 million native trees of floodplain variety only, and more than 10 million riverine grasses in all those projects together. And there are about 35 wetlands that we have been able to restore, in some places recreate, because there were gradual depressions which have been kept as it is. And when they are brimming full, they save about 14-20 million liters of water. And there are more than 200 resident and migratory birds that were spotted in some of them. And that's the kind of a connect that we are doing. There are people approaching us for field trainings. We are conducting bird walks, plantation programs. And Vasudev Ghat, which is the renamed Ghat opposite ISBT, now holds Yamuna Aarti twice a week. And then we carry out these other activities like yoga activities, kite festivals, trying to engage people into on their floodplains. So quickly, I'll take you through the various projects that we are doing and the achievements that we've been able to get to as of today. This is what Asita was. It's right across ITO. Asita is another name for River Yamuna in our scriptures. This is how the place used to look like. And slowly, slowly, that is what the transformation has brought about. There have been challenges, there have been mistakes, but we are learning every day. So if I can just go back, the initial target that we had fixed, we are almost reaching there. This is a huge wetland at the entry of Asita. And certain amenities. And that's our success story. It clearly tells us that we have been successful to some extent in trying to restore. This is another project, Bansera, where you're sitting today. This is how it used to look like. First time when the Honorable Lieutenant Governor gave us a task to get inside and start thinking how to plan it, this is what the whole place used to look like. And that's what it looks like today. That's a huge 3 point, it's a 2 megawatt solar park. That's how we like to call it. That's another project called Kalandi Aviral. Kalandi again being another name for River Yamuna. It's on the left of DND if you're going towards Noida. And that's how it looks like today. This is Kalandi Biodiversity Park, which Professor C.R. Babu is taking for us under CEMDE initiatives. Unfortunately, a large infrastructure work has been carried out by NHAI. We are soon hoping they'll be out of our sight and we'll be able to restore the whole thing again. This is Vasudev Ghat, as I mentioned. That's what the whole place used to look like 3 years ago when we had started working on it. We could not enter that area. That's another project where our teams are currently working on it. It's called Yamuna Vatika. That's a name fondly given by the Honorable Lieutenant Governor once again. And that's the ecological achievements that you see. In this project alone, we've been able to plant more than 15,000 trees. And mind you, floodplains are not the areas where you plant trees. People walk up to and say, the entire area is clear, why don't you just plant trees? So we've started giving it back to them in writing as an affidavit in the court that these are floodplains. You're not supposed to turn them into forests. So we are doing intelligent planting here wherever it is required. And since the court gave us the dictum of allowing people till at least a depth of about 150 to 300, 200 meters from the roads, that's the place where the people movement or their recreation or their connect is restricted to, other than the ghat, of course. The entire area is being developed as a natural buffer area. And this drain that passes through Vatika is getting treated. And we are, recently also our teams are working on installing more DSTPs further on site so that we ensure that the water remains and looks as clean as you can see in the picture. It's a picture from the site itself, not anywhere else. We've already developed some treatment wetlands. It's actually a complex ecology. It's not as simple as 2 plus 2, 4. Certain times, whatever interventions we are trying to make, we do fail, but then we come back with the learnings and we have our experts guiding us. That's another area called Amrut Biodiversity Park. It's right across Commonwealth Games Village. This is how the place used to look like. And if you would remove these shanties from one location, they would probably migrate to another but not go out. It was all the help from the Office of Honorable LG again, who helped, who gave us police support and gave us the confidence that they could be removed. And this area is now restored beautifully. This particular area is very peculiar. If I can just go back for a moment, this entire site, if you see the plan is placed in a manner where the river is at the bottom, this entire topography slopes on the opposite side of the river. So when the water floods and there is flooding or extra rain, the water sits in those depressions for longer than you would expect it to be. So that way we are able to hold more water on the floodplains, and that's the function of the floodplains, to act as a sponge. That's another project close to Yamuna, the Wazirabad Barrage. You see these large patches written as some funny names of LNDO, land allotted. So this entire area is floodplains, and it's closest to the Wazirabad Barrage, from where the water is released when Delhi is going to be, when it receives extra rainfall up on the upstreams. But this entire area, long ago, more than like 40, 50 years ago, was given to Forest Department. So all this exists as forest. But other than that, we've tried to restore as much as we could with the natural recreation principles that we are applying. Okay. So that was the situation in 2025 floods, and that was the situation in 2023 floods. So floodplain management is not restoration alone. It is the management in its complete sense. Some people say 1 in 25. So last year we received more than 1 in 100-year flood, something that Delhi had not even seen in 1978. But we've been able to successfully restore our sites. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Please stay on stage with us. And I would like to request Mr. Rajneesh Kumar, SC Horticulture, to please join us on stage to present a memento of DDA Green Expo to Srimati Nilima Soni, Director Landscape DDA. Presentations like these leave you in awe. What transformation! I think our department sees impossible and makes it I am possible. So we are seeing some really amazing transformations. Big congratulations to the department for these achievements. What a complex subject we got to witness and learn from. Thank you, ma'am.